Hi, this is Cheryl Gallant, your Conservative Member of Parliament for the historic riding of Renfrew-Nipissing-Pembroke. When it comes to Liberals and their wealthy friends, there are different rules for them than there are for you and I. Take travel, for example. I had a constituent who traveled with her mother to the United States where the mother underwent surgery. Medical travel has been one of the allowed exceptions to being forced into Trudeau's mandatory quarantine hotels. Of course, bureaucrats being bureaucratic, they said only her mother was exempt. She was stuck in that Toronto hotel awaiting her final COVID test for 4 days. Justin Trudeau returned from overseas recently. He spent a few hours in an Ottawa hotel. Trudeau's Ottawa hotel was not some federally contracted quarantine hotel like the kind you and I would have to stay at. Every commercial flight in Canada must land in Toronto, Montreal, Calgary, or Vancouver. But private jets can land at any airport. Since the start of the pandemic, wealthy Canadians, such as Drake or Cirque du Soleil founder Guy Laliberté, have flown in and out of Canada dozens of times, mostly to warm tropical islands. I'm not condemning Drake or saying he should have been forced into a Toronto quarantine hotel. The point is, you should not have been. My constituent, caring for her mother, should not have been. This was never a policy based on evidence. It was a punitive measure meant to punish Canadians for traveling. Except it seemed to only punish people without huge wealth or powerful connections. That's the kind of two-tier Canada Trudeau is building. Speaking of Liberals on jet planes, the revenue minister decided she needed a private plane to fly her to an announcement in her riding. That's the minister in charge of tax collecting. Except the plane wasn't sitting at her local airport on standby, it was in Ottawa. It took a 1,000-kilometer trip from Ottawa to her riding empty. Hopped her to and from her photo op in the riding, then returned another 1,000 kilometers to Ottawa empty again. The Liberals cannot go a single minute without lecturing you about your carbon, but when given the choice of taking a commercial flight with the smallest environmental impact or taking the private jet, the Liberals will pick the private jet every time. I'm sure she can justify it to herself. Liberal supporters who truly believe all life on this planet is doomed to burn up will rationalize away the minister's flight. They'll make excuses for her. They will say anything to keep their power and privilege. They want you to be unable to even afford filling your gas tank while they fly around the country on private jets. That's the kind of two-tier Canada Trudeau's building. Canadians with an appreciation of history were likely disappointed when a Kingston City Council removed a 100-year-old statue of Sir John A. Macdonald. He gave landowning First Nations members the right to vote. Laurier took away those rights when the Liberals got into power. Besides being Canada's first Prime Minister, Sir John A. Macdonald was a Member of Parliament for the now diminished riding of Kingston. It's really quite sad that Kingston would turn its back on Macdonald after celebrating the local boy made good for a century. Sad, but not surprising. City councils often skew to the far left. But what's surprising is the erasure of Macdonald's biographical webpage by the National Archives. Let that sink in. The National Archives of Canada the repository and guardians of our history erased Macdonald from its website. If residents of Kingston think their council has gone too far, they'll hold the councillors accountable at the next municipal election. But how do we hold the chief librarian of the National Archives accountable? Normally, we could bring her before a parliamentary committee and ask her why she thinks it's appropriate for the National Archives to delete history. With the Liberals angling for an election, the next possible committee meeting might not happen until February of 2022. By the way, the National Archives are getting rid of paper documents. Everything's going to be digital. Easier to delete. Easier to rewrite history. Some of you may remember how, prior to 9/11, the Taliban gained international infamy by destroying giant ancient Buddhist statues. The civilized world reacted in horror at the destruction of the statues, yet many people celebrated when the statues of Lenin, Stalin, and Saddam were pulled down. The difference is those statues were pulled down by the people while they were also pulling down the entire regime. It wasn't just the communist or Ba'athist governments which were toppled. It was the entire ideology of communism that was being torn down alongside the icons of communism. And that's the real goal of people pushing for statues to come down in Canada. They want to tear down our small L liberal, democratic, free market society and replace it with an illiberal, autocratic, communist system. Unlike our neighbors to the south, Canadians have never glorified Sir John A. Macdonald in the way Americans treat George Washington. While Washington is said to have never told a lie, Canadian children are taught that Macdonald was likely an alcoholic. Canadian history students learn about the national policy and the intercontinental railway, but they also learn about the bribery and corruption that went alongside. Many Canadians never learned about residential schools, but many did learn about the Red River Rebellion and the execution of Louis Riel. We've never put Macdonald on a figurative pedestal, even if the statues sit atop actual pedestals. He was a flawed and complicated person, just like you and me. But he put aside his differences with his political rivals, brought together Catholics and Protestants, French and English, and created a confederation. Canada was not perfect at creation, nor was Macdonald. Our mission is to continue his vision of uniting a vast continent of different people with different backgrounds into one country. Well, that's all the time we have for today. Live from Ottawa, this is Cheryl Gallant, wishing you a good night.